Welcome to episode 1 of the Weekly Stupid Podcast. I'm the editor in charge, and in this podcast, I'm going to go over what our staff is currently working on, preview this week's article, answer a submitted question, and for the functionally illiterate, I'm going to read last week's articles. I'm going to start with a short update on what the writers are up to. Sarah and Dr. Beekman are hard at work on, I'm not sure what to call it, I guess restoring the flutterbird population. They promise a video this week. That should be pretty interesting. Ed's update was kind of scripted by Ed. He wants me to report that he is a sensitive man and has spent this whole week planning a great Mother's Day for his mother. Dr. Beekman is hard at work building something he keeps referring to as an institute. We are all scratching our heads. Our most current articles go over a battle brewing between the Food and Drug Administration and the Consumer Product Safety Commission. It appears they both want to regulate toasters in a separate way and want to set temperature ratings that differ from agency to agency. Ed and Sarah give their interesting takes on the situation. Dr. Beekman was asked to do some testing in the lab to evaluate the testers and see which agency was correct. In the end, he misread the memo, and his results, although not what we asked, are very interesting to read. Since this is the initial podcast, we only really had one question, but it was asked by at least 100 listeners. Will Dr. Beekman put out a video on his toaster strudel method? We have presented that to Dr. Beekman. He says he's willing to do it. We'll see what happens this week. Last week's articles were about reduced iron and a new regulation to classify reduced iron as a Class A illegal drug, similar to cocaine. All 4 writers in our staff submitted an article on this topic. Dr. Beekman took the scientific report. Here's his article. Recently, there has been a push to classify reduced iron as a Class A illegal drug similar to cocaine. The addictive nature of reduced iron rivals and possibly exceeds cocaine. A study was conducted by an absolute plurality of scientists working on reduced iron. It appears they found some of the addictive properties inside the lower intestines of mice and rhesus monkeys. I'm not sure if Dr. Beekman found those or if a scientist found those. The study was started due to increased levels of reduced iron overdoses between the months of January and April. This trend is happening in emergency rooms across the nation. Back in 2006, Andy Rooney did a scientific study on this. His results from this study are now world famous in the Reduced Iron Handbook of Interesting Facts. Although not clearly stated, Andy revealed an overwhelming argument that reduced iron is far more addictive than cocaine. When mice were administered cocaine alongside reduced iron, the mice clearly chose the reduced iron. This was especially true when the reduced iron was presented in chocolate minty circles. It is not Dr. Beekman's position as a scientist to recommend legislation. It is Dr. Beekman's recommendation that they gather the young ladies pushing the drugs and prosecute them to the most extreme extents of the law. The good doctor then goes on to state that the pushers of this new epidemic have been using young females to help get people hooked. Currently, they are selling their product right out in the open, usually in front of grocery or household stores. Some of the more industrious pushers have the audacity to go door to door. They act innocently enough, but soon you are buying 3 or 4 boxes at a time, and eventually you are addicted. Of course, the good doctor wants to stress that it is his position to present the facts, and the lawmakers need to make the laws. Sarah Jean has a more personal take on this. It appears maybe as her youth she tried to join this organization. She starts by saying that she doesn't have to worry about reduced iron. She has been boycotting these stupid little girls dressed in green for years. As a young fellow freaky Flutterbird follower, she thought it might be a good idea to learn how to con older folks. She saw some of her fellow students pushing the reduced iron on the streets and said to herself, I can do that. But none of the girls would let her sell on their turf. If you know Sarah Jean like I know Sarah Jean, there's no way she's standing for that. This is where her love of nature started. She started a group called Angel Feathers. Each member was like a feather working as a team to lift a single angel towards heaven. Since her father was part of a motorcycle gang with the word angel in the name, she wanted to be like him. She learned a lot of good life lessons from her father. Some of the best were loyalty and retribution. The reduced iron pushers sure paid some retribution for disrespecting her group. She was instructed by her father not to go into any details. That's probably a good idea. Let's just say a little retribution feels pretty great. It's also a nice perk to know you are on the side of heaven. This youth activity helped her become the upstanding and honest citizen she is today. That being said, she still boycotts those evil little drug pushers. She may be able to forgive, but she will never forget the hard time they gave her in her youth. She goes on to say that like the flutterbird, she may be sad from time to time, but never out. Ed took more of a business approach to his article. He didn't see the issue here. These young entrepreneurs are just using the free market system as it was intended. They're not forcing anyone to purchase anything. The young up-and-comers are just using the gifts that God gave them. Ladies need to take advantage of their cuteness as long as they can. They won't be able to get out of speeding tickets forever. That sounds like Ed. The ladies are also very charming. Charm is the name of the game when it comes to sales. If you have charm, you can sell almost anything. As the ladies know, Ed is charming. Don't forget to send those photos to hunkyman@allstud.net. Now that really sounds like Ed. This experience will only help them as they get older and enter the business world. Here's where we get into Ed's real opinion. He just hopes that they learn to cook and clean. A good woman that can cook and clean and earn some money will be able to keep a man happy. When push comes to shove, isn't that what women want? I finish up this week's articles with my article. Normally I start with them, but I thought I'd finish this time. As you probably determined, my crack staff have uncovered the sinister group that currently goes by the name the Girl Scouts of America. Although most large institutions have some level of corruption, I don't believe this group has that much. There have been a variety of opinions from the different political parties on this topic since the push to classify reduced iron as an illegal drug. The Libertarians have their standard view on this topic. Their main pushback is the war on drugs has failed and people should be free to make their own choices. If you want to stuff yourself full of delicious cookies, then who is the government to stop you? Then, of course, they make some vague reference to Atlas Shrugged. Of course, if a libertarian was to stuff himself full of cookies and then die of an overdose, all non-libertarians would probably say, hey, that's just a good positive effect of the free market at work. Republicans, on the other hand, are fully on board with the war on reduced iron. Their official statement is, do as we say, so you are better than those godless Democrats. Drugs are straight from the devil, and if you are on drugs, you won't be able to use straps. And if you can't use straps, how are you going to pull your boots up? Then they make some reference to how everything would be better if President Reagan was still in office. The Democrats are taking a more delusional approach. They believe that if we can impeach the president, reduced iron will probably not be a problem anymore. They believe there's a connection between reduced iron and Russia, of course. This proves that President Trump is a Russian agent, and not only should he be impeached, but his Supreme Court appointment should be removed. They should be replaced with nominees provided by whomever the Democrats decide is the most agreeable to them at the time they get appointed. Because as we all know, whoever the Democrats like today, they probably won't like tomorrow. And that finishes up the initial podcast of the Weekly Stupid. As always, enjoy the stupid.